In 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General released a report, not about cancer, not about addiction, not about heart disease, about loneliness. He called it an epidemic. He said it carried the health risk of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And beneath the headlines was a point that got far less attention. This isn't just personal, it's structural. The spaces that used to turn strangers into friends have been quietly disappearing. And at almost the same time, the culture started telling you that if you felt lonely, the problem was your mindset. So now millions of people live inside the same contradiction, more connected than ever, and more structurally alone than any generation before them. And that is not bad luck. It is design. To understand how that happened, you only need to look at three things: the spaces, the language, and the technology. You've probably heard the advice: learn to be alone, become the lone wolf. You don't need anyone. It sounds like strength. It sounds like independence. It's everywhere. Self-help books, motivational reels, therapy culture, even dating advice. The message is consistent. If you are lonely, the solution is internal. Fix yourself. Become more comfortable with solitude. And for a while it works. You sit with yourself. You journal. You stop reaching out to people who don't reach back. You build what feels like a fortress of self-sufficiency. But then something happens that no one warned you about. The fortress gets quiet. And the quiet doesn't feel powerful anymore. It feels like a room with no doors. If you've been told that learning to be alone is a superpower, and you followed that advice, and it worked, and now you feel more isolated than before you started, you are not broken. You walked into a trap that was designed to feel like freedom. Imagine a place you could go on a Tuesday afternoon with no plan, no agenda, no one expecting you. You'd just show up, and other people would too. For most of the 20th century, places like that were far more common than they are now. A sociologist named Ray Oldenburg spent his career documenting them. In 1989, he gave them a name: third places. Home is the first place. Work is the second. The third place is everywhere else people gather without a task, a purchase, or a reason beyond being around each other. The pub on the corner, the barbershop, the church steps where people lingered long after the service ended, the park bench where strangers became familiar faces, and then, slowly, something more. Oldenburg's point was simple. These places were social infrastructure. They held communities together. You didn't need a reason to show up. You just showed up. That infrastructure has been dramatically reduced, commercialized, redesigned, or simply removed. The numbers tell the story in fragments. Bowling alleys disappeared. Independent diners closed. Church attendance fell. Libraries cut hours in community programs. Different places, same pattern. The spaces that once made casual belonging possible were slowly stripped away. The corner pub became a chain that optimized for table turnover. The park bench was redesigned with armrests in the middle, not to improve comfort, but to prevent lingering. One by one, the places where strangers became neighbors were replaced by spaces designed for individual consumption. And nobody noticed. Because each one made sense on its own. Each closure, each renovation, each optimization, each upgrade. Individually, rational. Collectively, architectural lobotomy. Consider one street. In 1985, it had a diner, a barbershop, a laundromat with chairs where people waited and talked, and a bar that didn't rush you out. 4 places where a person with nowhere to be could simply exist, among other people who also had nowhere to be. By 2020, the diner was a fast casual chain. The barbershop was a subscription studio. The laundromat had no chairs. The bar was a cocktail lounge that closed at 10. Same street, same buildings. The places stayed. The lingering disappeared. What happened next was economic, and the Italian version of this story makes it clearest. In a small town in northern Italy, a cafe owner kept his doors open for hours every afternoon with no expectation that anyone would buy anything. People came anyway. They argued about football. They complained about the mayor. A widower sat in the corner and listened. Nobody timed his stay. This wasn't charity. It was infrastructure. Presence paid back indirectly. The people who lingered in the afternoon returned in the morning. The nearby shops benefited too. Community worked because the economics were circular. That economic model no longer exists. The modern economy does not optimize for presence. It optimizes for throughput. Every seat must justify its revenue per hour. Every square foot must earn its lease. The third place didn't die of neglect. It was squeezed out by incentives that reward efficiency over lingering. And what replaced those places tells you everything. The pub became a co-working space with a subscription and a no-talking policy. The town square became a shopping mall with security guards and a parking limit. The park got prettier and less usable. The diner closed, and a ghost kitchen replaced it, serving food through an app to people eating alone. The new spaces are not designed for people to meet. They are designed for people to spend. The difference is everything. Think about the last time you went somewhere alone, hoping to just be around people. Not a party, not an event someone organized, just a place. A coffee shop, maybe. A park. A bar. You sat down. You looked around. And what did you see? Everyone else was already inside their own bubble. Earbuds in. Laptop open. Eyes on a screen. Groups that arrived together stayed together. No one was available. Not hostile, not unfriendly, just sealed. You could hear the espresso machine. You could hear someone typing. You could hear the ambient playlist that was chosen specifically so that no one would need to talk. And you sat there, with your drink, in a room full of people, and felt more alone than if you'd stayed home. I want to be honest about something. I don't have a clean answer for this one. I've done this. I've walked into places thinking, maybe today I'll just talk to someone. Maybe there will be that accidental conversation that turns into something real. The kind that used to happen. The kind my parents described like it was effortless. And I left feeling like I was the only person in the room who was looking for that. Maybe you have too. The shift wasn't just physical. It was cultural. And some of the deepest damage happened in the language. Advice that began as emotional self-respect slowly hardened into emotional self-containment. Don't depend on toxic people became don't depend. Set boundaries became stay unreachable. You are enough became you should need less. And that shift mattered. Because now the world could remove the spaces that once supported human connection and still convince you the emptiness was your responsibility. So when loneliness showed up on a Tuesday night, when the apartment was quiet and you wanted to call someone for no particular reason, just to hear a voice, the voice in your head said, "Why do you need that? Are you codependent? Are you not doing the work?" So you didn't call. You opened the phone instead. You scrolled. The ache dulled slightly. and you went to bed having successfully performed independence. But you didn't feel independent. You felt obedient. You obeyed a cultural instruction that told you your need was a flaw. And the culture that gave you that instruction had already removed every place where the need could be met. Human beings regulate each other. Stress, safety, calm, even emotional stability. These are shaped in relationship. The need for connection isn't a character flaw. It isn't immaturity. It's part of how people work. And the advice culture told you to override it. To treat loneliness not as a signal that something is missing, but as evidence that you haven't done enough work on yourself. There's a pattern here that ordinary words like loneliness don't fully capture. So I want to give it a name, because things without names are harder to fight. I call it structural solitude. Not loneliness, not introversion, not social anxiety. Structural solitude is the condition of living inside a society that has systematically removed the architecture of spontaneous connection, and then told you that your resulting isolation is a personal failing. It is structural because it is not caused by your behavior. It is caused by the design of the world around you. The third places are gone. The cultural narrative says you should be fine without them, and the economy requires you to spend most of your waking hours either working or recovering from work, leaving no margin for the kind of slow, unstructured togetherness that friendships actually require to form. You are not failing at connection. Connection is failing at being available to you. Think about what it actually takes to make a real friend as an adult. Repeated time, unstructured contact, showing up in the same place often enough for familiarity to turn into trust. Not one coffee date, not one gym class, not one networking event where everyone exchanges contacts and then never follows up. It takes the kind of slow, unprofitable, inefficient human contact that the modern world has systematically eliminated from daily life. You can't schedule intimacy. You can't optimize trust. And yet that is exactly what the world asks you to do, and then calls you broken when it doesn't work. And once you see this, a lot of modern advice starts sounding different. Because the system doesn't just remove the infrastructure, it sells you a weaker substitute. And what makes this substitute powerful is that it rarely feels violent. It feels efficient. Social media didn't replace connection. It replaced the discomfort of not having it. You open the app. You see faces. You tap the heart. Something in your chest relaxes, just slightly. But you can't build trust through likes. You can't develop the kind of closeness that requires awkward silence and physical proximity through a platform designed to eliminate both. The platforms don't replace third places. They replace the feeling of needing them. The mechanism isn't distraction, it's substitution. And the substitution is everywhere once you start looking. The group chat that replaced the dinner table. The dating app that replaced the bar. The wellness notification that replaced the neighbor knocking on your door. Each one more convenient. Each one less human. The app doesn't fill the need. It makes the need quieter. So you stop looking. Not because you stopped wanting, because the wanting became bearable. That's not connection. That's sedation. And most people accepted the shift because the substitutes were easier than the real thing. Real connection takes effort, vulnerability, and time nobody has. The substitute asked for almost nothing. Picture a Friday evening. You feel the pull to go somewhere, to be around people. But you open the app instead. Someone's dinner, someone's vacation. You tap the heart. the pull weakens. Not gone, just dulled. The evening passes, and you go to bed having technically connected with dozens of people. But the ache is still there in the morning. And one day you realize you haven't made a new friend in 3 years, and you can't explain why. And this is where loneliness stops being emotional and becomes economic. People with strong local support networks rely less on paid substitutes. They borrow tools from neighbors instead of buying them. They share meals instead of ordering delivery. They process emotions with trusted people instead of purchasing therapy apps and wellness subscriptions. A connected person needs less from the market. An isolated person is the perfect consumer. Every unmet social need becomes a purchasing opportunity. Loneliness creates demand for substitutes, and those substitutes are sold by the same economy that helped erode the social spaces people once relied on. The global wellness industry is now worth over $5 trillion. Meditation apps, therapy subscriptions, self-care product lines, digital companionship services. These industries grow fastest where ordinary forms of connection have weakened. The weaker the community, the stronger the market for substitutes. The more alone people feel, the more profitable relief becomes. This is not a conspiracy. It is something worse. It is an incentive structure that no one designed, but everyone profits from. The isolation is not a bug. It is a revenue stream. Drop this. I see the architecture now. Structural solitude is not a phase. It is not a mindset problem. It is not something that resolves when you do the work. It is the predictable result of a civilization that optimized for productivity, individual consumption, and digital efficiency, at the direct expense of the informal, unstructured, inefficient togetherness that human beings require to remain sane. And then we looked at the people crumbling under the weight of all that efficiency and told them to meditate. The loneliness epidemic is less of a mystery than we're told. It is an invoice. And it gets paid in small, ordinary moments, every time synthetic contact replaces real connection. If something in this landed, if you recognized the architecture, drop this. I stopped blaming myself. You were told you were the problem. That if you felt alone, you hadn't done enough work on yourself. But you were living inside a world that had quietly removed the places where closeness used to happen, and sold you a language that called your need a flaw. That's not your failure. That's architecture. And once you see the architecture, the question changes. Not, what's wrong with me? It never was. The question is, what was taken? And if it was built once, could it be built again?